Hello, and welcome to Lunchtime on LinkedIn with Fanny Snaith. And Fanny Snaith is going to be chatting to, today, Jason Butler. Hello, Jason.
Oh, hi, Fanny. Thanks for having me on. Very exciting.
It is exciting. This is a first, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you done any other?
I expect nothing less of you. You're always first at everything, right? So, where you go, others follow.
I don't know about that. I don't know. It's funny, this new LinkedIn Live that people are doing. It's a lovely new medium. And I thought that what would be a good idea is to use LinkedIn to open the door to conversation about money. I am, for people who don't know me, I'm a money coach, and Jason is an amazing personal finance expert. We'll talk a little bit more about who you are and what you do in a minute. But I'm a money coach, and really just my thing is for us to start talking about money, for people to view money as a really powerful tool, and just how powerful money can be, rather than viewing it as painful and a problem. So this is the start of that, really, and just to start the conversations and keep it going. So Jason, do you want to tell us a little bit about you? Because I looked at your bio, and you've got an amazing plethora of stuff that's all money related that you've been doing over your career. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, very, very briefly, because obviously I know we want to get into talk about the whole money story, but essentially now I focus on everything to do with making sure that money is a force for good in people's lives, starting with myself, obviously, but I want to also make sure that the wisdom and the experience and the knowledge that I've built up over a 30-odd year career, and that career spanned financial services, starting out as a salesperson, selling people life assurance, then moving on and realizing, actually, I think people need a plan. Then becoming a financial planner. I became a certified financial planner in 1998. I think at the time I was one of the youngest. I ran my own financial services business, a financial planning business, for 17 years, which I exited in 2015 and sort of not semi-retired, but I was at a stage when I could take stock and have options. And for the last 5 years, I focused on two primary areas. I focus on the emotional, behavioural and psychological aspects of money and everything that means. And I basically work with large employers, medium to large employers, helping them craft their financial wellbeing message for their workforces by bringing it alive through live events, through videos. I script videos for them, I create their media, etc. So I'm that expert, and I've worked on mental health platforms, etc. But I also work with a handful of wealthy families each year to help them build harmony, communication and common purpose, and understand the role of money. So I'm I said to someone the other day, at 51 now, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, not because being smug or I know all the answers, but because I'm quite comfortable in my own skin. And the paradox is that I've got more economic means available to me than I've ever had. And yet my wife and who I've been married to for nearly 26 years, our life is now simpler and not frugal, but really simple and low cost. Because we're clear what we want in life. And actually, this is the real interesting thing, is that when I was young, I came from we'll talk about a poor background. I was striving all the time thinking money was the answer, but it really wasn't the answer. You need enough, but understanding how much is enough and knowing the role of money in your life, and to make sure that, okay, you may be a natural worrier, but to make sure that's in proportion and in control and it doesn't dominate you. And I'm really on this mission to make sure that money doesn't have more power over people's lives at any stage in their life than it deserves. So money deserves to be respected and understood and treated with, as I say, a proper degree of intentionality. But we don't want to give money and all of it, what it represents, any more power over our lives than it warrants. So enough, but not too much. So that's it. So my background really, as I say, is 30 years financial services. 5 years now is really focusing on helping people get the most out of their life and making sure that, that they are making as wiser choices as they can in the context of what's important to them and what makes them happy and fulfilled.
Fantastic. Do you know what I really love about what you've just said? Is because it's something that's really close to my heart as well. It's about finding that balance. My story, which I know you know, was all about me trying to get this vast wealth because that was what was going to make me happy. And me finding out that it didn't make me happy. And you virtually sort of said just the same. It's about trying to find that lovely equilibrium whereby we've got this tool, this energy, which, let's face it, sits in our pockets 24/7. We never stop spending money. Even when the lights are on at night time or something on standby, we've constantly got this energy flowing through our lives. It's about learning to get on with it and be in balance with it. But let me ask you a question. You talked about growing up and said, why do you care so much? Because you could just go and do whatever you wanted to do now. Why do you care so much about helping people and finding that balance?
Well, it's funny. All my research, I've got a new book coming out next year called The Money Miracle. And part of the research of that was all about happiness. And a big shout out to Chris Budd, who's a fantastic guy down in your neck of the woods, Bristol Way, who has a fantastic podcast called the Financial Wellbeing Podcast. And he's a lovely guy. And he really has this big focus on the role of money and happiness. And in The Money Miracle, I really sort of thought about, okay, what is the role of money in happiness? And the reason why I care about what I do is because I have the two primary things that really all the research shows us, gives us the real sense of well-being and contentment, is having enough purpose in your life, things that are purposeful, and things that are pleasurable. And all of the research says you need to oscillate between those two things. So playing the piano for me is pleasurable. Whereas if I do a well-being talk, obviously I get paid for them. Of course I do. And I like people to get a response, but I feel a lot of purpose with that. Writing the book is more purpose than pleasure because it is a grind, as you know, Fanny, from all the work you've done. And all the research is not glamorous, and I've got tons of books everywhere and loads of notes, but it's purpose. But I can't just do purposeful things. I have to do pleasurable things as well. So for me, the reason I care is because it serves a need in me first and foremost for purpose. And that is the two parts of the pendulum. If everything I did was pleasure, I wouldn't be as happy as I am today. And by the definition of, if you were doing something that you feel is purposeful and matters to other people, and give an example why I care, and it is ego. I had someone the other day who, I did a webinar the other day, and the person who organized it, big company, said, that was amazing. Here are 15 comments we had. And one comment said, this has changed my life. Now, if you can have that impact on someone, and this is not just about what I do, it's about anything else you do, your impact doesn't have to be doing a webinar to 400 people and having people say great things about you, but the impact could be you were nice to someone at a bus stop, or you let someone go before you, or you were magnanimous and you didn't try and be right all the time. So I think what I care is because I know the wisdom that I've learned, and bear in mind my backstory growing up and all the baggage I had as a young person.
We might talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, I know that does have a real big impact on people. Yeah. And I know that my style of delivery works with lots of people. Of course, I'm Marmite. Not everyone likes me. I get that. I'm long past everyone liking me. As long as enough people get what I do and get something from it. And I'm all about helping people help themselves. So not lecturing them, just sharing light. And I love the live Q&As that I do on webinars. I love the Q&As that I get from normal people. And when someone comes up to me in a car park like they did in March before lockdown and said, you're Jason, aren't you? I thought, oh, God, this could be tricky. He said, I've been watching your videos and reading your blogs, and I'm getting married next year, and you've been really helpful. I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, does it?
No, I delivered a workshop last week. Actually, I've been delivering workshops for a housing association in London for guys that have been out of work for quite a long time and have got various struggles in life. And I did the first workshop on money mindset, and we just talked about what you believe and trying to understand what we believe first and foremost. And I encouraged the guys to talk to each other and to sort of just open the doors to conversation about money. And I went back the second time, and one of the ladies said, Fanny, I have to tell you. And I said, what? And she said, you moved blocks in me. She said, you moved some blocks out of my mind, and it got me to get on the phone and speak to the council about these benefits. And I got a check for £900, and that's made me feel so much more relaxed about my operation coming up, etc. And I was like, and those things make your heart sing. So let's go back a little bit then, because the thing is, I think we have to know, you and I, that we're in the money world because it interests us and it's high up on our list of values. And we're really lucky to have money high on our list of values, because there's many people who sort of say, oh, money's not really very important to me. And yet that's when we can go into an area of trouble, when you want to spend a lot of money, but then you're saying that money's not very important to us. So we're lucky in the fact that we've fallen into a profession that seeps into our soul, as it were, so that we are full of purpose. But going all the way back now, what sort of messages did you get from your parents then? Because I'm a firm believer that what you see, hear and observe as a child does go a long way to shape how you are around money as an adult. So was it all positive experience? What kind of experiences did you have?
No, there's two ways to think of it. First of all, in terms of the money messages, total scarcity, catastrophe, never going to have enough, not worthy. Right. They were all the messages. My mum and dad split up when I was 5, very traumatic split up as well. My dad never communicated with my mum, and she was highly neurotic and always has been and still is to this day. She's my mum. I can't change that about her. You know, she is what she is. And then she remarried when I was about 8, 9 to a very unpleasant individual who basically psychologically bullied me. Sexual abuse or anything like that. And then occasionally there would be physical violence. And I was the youngest of 3 boys. So you can imagine, very, very difficult. So my insecurity as a child was extremely high. I was very insecure. But you see, the thing was, I hadn't had developed intellect, but my elder brother went to super selective grammar school, St. Olave's. Okay. So he has a very high level of intellect. My middle brother has Mr. Charisma. You know, he's got so much charisma, but can't spell the word building, but he's a multi-millionaire. And I like to think I have a little bit of both of them. But I'm not super bright academically. I have to work at learning. And so if you combine a neurotic mother, scarcity, money was all over. She just couldn't fathom it out. She always worked. She never claimed any benefits. I never had free school dinners. She should have claimed them, quite frankly. So I grew up with a thing where there was lots of scarcity, lots of catastrophe. And my mum, I can always remember trying to get the money for the rent. She rented all the time a house. But interestingly, my 2 older brothers, as I was getting older, and although I was navigating this terrible relationship with my stepfather, psychological and sometimes the physical abuse in terms of him lashing out at me, that was his insecurity. I didn't go to great school. It was a comprehensive. I didn't pass my 11 plus as we used to have then to get into a decent school. Anyway, the long and short of it was, but I was quite thoughtful. And I loved learning. And the only place I could find that was really comforting for me was to go to the library, because we had a tiny 2-up, 2-down terraced house. It looked like being burgled. Well, that was just the way it was. It was just untidy and mayhem. So I needed some sense of order. And I used to look around at the books and I used to thought, even though I wasn't getting on well at school, I loved learning. I loved being curious. And I could absorb these books, and the librarians obviously loved me. And then the Monday night and the Thursday night was late night, 8:30 it was open to. So I could have something to eat and then whiz down there for 2.5 hours. I mean, it's a bit of an odd thing, but it was really how I started to learn about the world. And here's the interesting thing. Both my brothers are extremely entrepreneurial, and they just had the gene. They could make money out of anything. You know, my brother had a bike repair business when he was at school. Right. My brother did this. There was always businesses going on. So there was never any case that I was going to be a victim. So I didn't have this victim mentality. I had anxiety as a child, real high anxiety, but it was never diagnosed. And I wouldn't say I'm a mentally depressive or hurt person, but it was that trauma of the upbringing and the scarcity. And so I was always extremely driven. And one of the things I remember, that you can't change your personality trait. So I couldn't help the fact that I always ran up the stairs. So I was always going to be a dynamic person. The question was, would I direct that into areas that were positive, or would I direct it into areas that were negative? So long and short of it was complete fluke. I won't bore you with the sort of got through school, left with about 5 O levels, tried to go to college. That all fell apart. I don't know what happened there. My brother said, oh, come and work with me. I went to work for him, various different jobs. I did everything, cleaning toilets, driving vans, you name it, I did it. And I just fell into financial services when I was 20.
Wow.
I could always earn a few quid, but I could certainly spend it. So I had this Jekyll and Hyde character of going down to the Abbey National, which is now Santander, and putting money in, and then going and buying some complete crap that I hadn't even thought like I even needed, because it was a response to scarcity, and it was a. So I was desperate to save it, but I was equally desperate to spend it. And this is this Jekyll and Hyde, the doer and the planner, these two personalities that we all have to a greater or lesser degree. Anyway, I fell into financial services. And at that time, I bought a flat and it managed to fall into negative equity within about 18 months of me moving in the early 90s. If anyone remembers that, we went to 15% interest rates. My mortgage doubled. I ended up with £17,000 in negative equity. I had £31,000 of non-mortgage debt. God knows where that had come from. I was hiring out nightclubs for parties just on the whim. I had 2 cars. I'd have several £100 suit, a different girlfriend every month. It was just out of control. The whole thing was nuts. I mean, luckily I never did drugs. I did like a good drink. I mean, if I'd done drugs, it would have been terrible. I mean, I just knew to stay away from that. And I always went running and I always went to the gym. So those two things, staying away from drugs and always having an exercise regime, are the only things, together with a get up and go character. But here's the thing. Within about 18 months of financial services, I realised how I could actually earn money. And by the time I was 24, I was earning in today's money £100,000.
Right,
so
brilliant.
60,000 quid. Yeah. That's a lot of money. Unbelievable. I don't even know where it went. I've got no idea. I never looked at my bank account. So on the outside, I had a great life. And there were aspects of it that, looking back, was great fun. Mm-hmm. But I was also equally still to this day very embarrassed and still feel pain about that time, because I squandered many things, not just money, but I squandered, I should have gone in slightly different routes. But we can't go back. We can only go forward.
We can only go forward.
Yeah, the big change in me was when I met the love of my life, my wife. And I met my wife. This is funny, right? So for me, I would probably own a car longer than I would have a girlfriend. Okay. So it might be anxiety problems. I don't know. But never had any, I was never lonely. And then I met my wife in the end of March and I married her the following January. And that was 26 years ago this January.
Congratulations.
So because she's actually, although we're very different, we got very similar values. And actually, she's not a spender. She doesn't really want big swanky things. I was always the one pushing for more consumption, and she was never really bothered about it.
Right.
So the interesting thing is that we went on various, three things happened. Within about 3 years, we bought this house that I'm living in now. I've been here 22 and a half years in Suffolk. We got married. We had our first child. And I started my business, having been in financial services for 7-8 years. And we had various detours of that business, and then it went bang, and nearly lost I had to sell it and buy it back from a consolidator. But that business went on to be very, very successful, and it earned me a lot of money. And then I sold out in 2015, and then I had some other businesses that paid me out as well. So luckily, and interestingly, at 30, we sat down, my wife and I, with the late, great David Norton, who was one of the very best financial planners in the UK at the time.
Okay.
He was my mentor, and I paid him then in 1999. I paid him £5,000. So that's probably about $9 grand now, 10 grand.
Yeah.
Develop a plan for a year, over a year. And there were a number of things we wanted to do. And bear in mind, there was a train wreck before, but I could always come to get money together. I said, look, I want to be financially independent by the time I'm 50. Paid work is optional. I want to be able to give my kids great education. We only had one then, and a great start in life. And I want to be debt free by the time I'm 50. And we want to enjoy life along the way. We don't just want to all wait till then. And although we went down lots of cul-de-sacs and turns and things, and it wasn't plain sailing, and ups and downs in every aspect of my life, we pretty much did achieve that. Now, the funny thing is, it wasn't a straitjacket. That wasn't the be all. The age was just arbitrary. Didn't matter.
Well, hang on a minute. Let me slow you down just for a second. Just you got from your childhood. I just wanted to pause for a minute and just say hi to all the people that are watching here as well. It doesn't actually show that many people are watching, but we are getting some comments up, which is great. If anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask Jason, then please just do pop them in the comments. But something that's interesting that you said, we all go down cul-de-sacs and down potholes and all that kind of stuff. And I think for many people who see financial advisors and money coaches and, successful motivational speakers all standing there, and, we sort of say about our stories, and that it's been a real twisty, turny road along the way. But it's so interesting to hear that, you know, that you wanted to be out of debt by 50. I think sometimes we sort of think, oh, they must be absolutely amazingly loaded and all that kind of stuff. But we all have our own stuff, don't we? We all have our own stuff that we do. And I think we have to go down those cul-de-sacs and experiences. And I was thinking about, you know, you're obviously one of the, you know, you've obviously got a Duracell battery in you somewhere, because you just like power. And I'm, you know, that energy is fantastic. You never talk much about your dad, but I'm wondering if you got any of that from, you know, what your dad was like, etc.
Yeah, not like that at all.
Not like that at all. But you've got this energy, this sort of survival. I'm gonna conquer the world, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Which is really good. So then let's look at the sort of the vulnerable side a minute. What would you say was the biggest money mistake that you ever made?
We haven't got time. I haven't got the biggest. Yeah, I know, but it's difficult because there's lots of contenders. I think the biggest money mistake I ever made was buying things with finance when I was in my early 20s. It's the absolute, I mean, I'm so vociferous about this now, that debt is not your friend. It's an enemy. It's seeking to keep you in the bowels of mediocre and lack of control. It's just absolutely, I should never have got a credit card. I should never have got a car on finance. I should never have had an overdraft. I should never have borrowed money ever.
Let me ask you this then. So when you were trying to pick the biggest money mistake, were you drawn towards something that was practical, i.e. literally the financial loss, or were you drawn to something that was more psychological, something that was more painful emotionally?
It's the funny thing is, obviously, when you have high anxiety as a child, that goes into adulthood, and you don't feel secure. When you don't feel secure, then you seek external validation, and external validation, one aspect of it can be how you spend your money. If you spend it on consumption, because no one can see your bank balance. So I sit here today and I say to people, you can't tell from looking at me that I have no debt. I don't even own a credit card now. Okay. You can't tell that from looking at me. But if I've got a Rolex on and I've got pictures of my Ferrari, which I don't have, and I don't have a Rolex, but if I can show you the badges of consumerism, or the bling, the stuff, and I pick pictures of being on beaches in Hawaii and all this, then somehow I can get your validation. So the danger is that and we're all different, and we can have this state of anxiety needing external validation, what's called extrinsic motivation, when we have trauma in our life, all right? When we're vulnerable. You might have had the best childhood in the world, but if you've had a terrible trauma and your family's all been killed in a car accident, 3 years down the line, you're susceptible to con artists and people saying this is the way you should go, or people encouraging you to do things. So yeah, I think it's the desire for control. The ultimate, which is very high in people with higher anxiety. You're seeking more control, and one of the ways you do it, if you don't have good role models and you don't have the right environment and you're around the wrong people and you're looking in the wrong direction, is that you can get drawn into behaviors. And your brain is a success-driven machine. So if you're thinking something is going to be the answer, that's what you do. So if you think that successful people drive big swanky cars on finance, you'll have one and you'll think it's normal. If all your friends are freely spending more money on their eating out than they are in their pension contributions, then you're going to be like them. So yeah, that for me, it was I subliminally think probably trying to get control, but doing it in a way and get validation and acceptance of others, because obviously I was feeling very anxious and desperately wanted to be loved. I mean, that's at the bottom line. Of course, that's the very base level. But at the end of the day, also, I do think I got into habits as well. So the catalyst might have been those emotions, but actually what happened was I got into a habit of drinking and going out and buying this and doing that and not even thinking about it. And the credit card limits, unbelievable. I mean, they just keep throwing
with credit cards are just throwing money at us. You know, it's ridiculous. I work with clients.
They're not your friend. Yeah.
They are not your friend. I mean, but I think, you know, the interesting part of it is that even when somebody is heavily in debt, how much credit is still offered to you, even when they know full well that they can't afford it.
But spending to alleviate sadness and boredom, which is what a lot of people do, even if they don't have deep psychological issues, to alleviate sadness and boredom can become a habit. It becomes your go-to trigger. And I certainly was guilty of that, you know. So I think it's not just, it wasn't just that, it was also I developed bad habits. And one of the reasons I developed the bad habits, as well as the catalyst that I mentioned, was because I didn't have any money principles. And one of the things now, I can answer virtually any question on my live events that I do, whether they're in person, the webinar ones now, you know, because I got 8 money principles. And I just say, have you done principle 1, 2, 3? Have you done?
Tell us about your 8 money principles.
Well, they're on my website, jason-butler.com. You can go there and download them from the tools section. But essentially, it's you have to have a smart spending plan. And a smart spending plan is my word for a budget. I don't use the word budget because I hate it. And it was really just me deciding where the money was going to go based on my identity. So I'm very into identity, links to habits, habits linked to identity. Between, you know, spending now for the essentials, spending on fun, and it is important to allocate money for fun, because I love fun, and for spending on the future, which includes repaying debt. So the smart spending plan is the essential. Then the second stage is to build just a little bit of cash, just to get a little bit of cash, to just feel like you're making some progress. Then it's to get rid of all this smelly, horrible debt, non-mortgage debt. And then it's to build up more cash so that you can weather the storm. If you lose your job, you get ill, a bill comes in. And then it's about making sure you're putting money dedicated away for when you can't or don't want to work. I don't use the word retirement or pension. That's old hat. But making work optional fund, you know, putting sensible amounts into that. I'm still saving now. Can't help it. I mean, I like saving for that, right? Then it's making sure you've got all the right insurances, even now. Right. So I've got enough money to live off, but I still got an income protection policy. So if I can't work, it pays me a tax-free amount every year. It's just my kind of, if I couldn't work and couldn't add to the pot, I've still got that more.
That's still the security kicking in.
I have loads of insurance. I don't need it, but I like it. I take the view that life insurance and income protection, even if you don't need it anymore, if you cancel it, you're probably going to have one of those horrible illnesses. So my view is a bit like fridge insurance. Keep it. And you don't care if you don't claim. It's the best loss of money.
Yes, I don't agree with that. See, what we do is I had all those insurances, and I just thought, why are we came up to like over 100 quid a month for all these insurances. One, I've got a very handy husband, which really helps. But secondly, we just started putting the money aside. Because we realised, well, hang on a minute, how many years have we been paying this? And how many times have we claimed on it? And it was like virtually never. So now we just set that money aside every month and put it in a pot so that should something break down.
The way I see it, Fanny, is I pay £250 a month. I pay £380 a month on my insurances, which includes my health insurance. My view is, the way I look at it is it's a very small cost relatively, because I'm pretty fit and I can get the cover, but it's a relatively low probability, high impact event, because it's the wealth that I'm continuing to earn and add to the pot. That if I wasn't here, it's not like my wife needs it. It's, I think the family wants to, my family, I'm very into teaching values and principles. My daughters are becoming more involved in what we do, business and money. I'd like any gap between now and when, say, 70, if I can't or don't want to work anymore, that wealth that I would have created, that I can't create if I'm ill or I'm dead, I just want the family to make sure they've got that money to do things that I would have done with it. Because I do a lot of giving, and for me, that is also important. So I don't want that future giving to be put to one side because the family's got enough for its needs and it won't do the rest of what I would do. So most of my money that I earn now, I'm giving. So I don't want to lose that. So we've all got our different reasons for having things, but I go right back to principles. What's important to me? Where am I? And then after that one of the insurance, the 7th milestone is to repay the mortgage early, and I don't have a mortgage now. And then the final milestone, 8, is just to keep stacking up more cash and more investments so you can give more money away. And that's it. Very simple.
Right. So let's just take a little bit of a switch now then. So you've got some really strong principles, and you've got a very good, strong feeling of what your values are, of what's wrong and what's right and how you want to be and all that kind of stuff. So if I was to appoint, and I'm not talking about whole economic stuff, but just if I was to appoint you Chancellor of the Exchequer tomorrow, what would be the first 3 things you would do?
Well, again, it's controversial because I don't want to alienate anyone who might want to hire me or buy my books, but I would align capital gains tax and income tax and national insurance and just have it all as one tax. I wouldn't distinguish capital gains and income. Why should you, if you make money on a property or a house or whatever?
And inheritance tax, did you say?
No, I didn't say that yet. I said align income tax, capital gains tax, and income tax, so national insurance, so that it doesn't matter how you make returns. Okay. Yeah. Labour shouldn't be taxed any more or less than unearned gains, even if you just happen to be lucky or clever. The second thing I would do is I would completely reform inheritance tax so there wouldn't be any farm allowances, no business allowances other than perhaps $1 million. I think there is now. There'll be no loopholes, and I would only allow the first sort of £600,000 of a principal residence to be tax free. Then the third thing that I would do.
Would you have it at the same rate?
Probably, yeah. I would probably just say with inheritance tax, it would just tax like income and capital gains. All of it would be the same. So it would be taxed. Anything you received would be taxed on you as the recipient. So I'd just say if in a year you received £1 million, income or gains or inheritance, it's rate.
Andrew Wilson, who's watching here, I know he's a big finance guy. I'm sorry, Andrew, I've forgotten which your company is, but he's just said he agrees with you with the taxes.
Yeah. And then the third thing I think I would also do is I would make it really, really easy for people to start businesses and support them with businesses that make it easy to do the key things that we're going to need to deal with in the future, which is equality of opportunity, anything to do with giving people equal opportunity to start or do stuff, the green agenda. I mean, for instance, I'm putting a car charging point into a property that I'm building on my garden, the house. I can't get the grant from the government because I don't own an electric car, right? Well, I'm putting an electric charging point there so that people who do use that house or rent it or live in it have got a charge point, but I'm penalised. So again, I would make sure that all of the incentives are there. I would make sure also that we're backing all the businesses of the future, which is essentially everything from battery technology to clean energy. And I would also be making sure that the employers have a real incentive to upskill their people to be the best version that they can be. And I think at the moment, it's all a bit of a bugger's muddle and a mess. So that's probably what I would do. But I'm not saying it's easy, and it's easy to criticize the current government, past governments, future governments. But I just think that you need to align incentives with your outcomes, with what you're trying to achieve. And I know lots of people think, oh, well, I created all my wealth, okay? And I think it's quite right that if I leave any money, that it should be taxed at quite a high level, okay? Because my children have got my values, they've got a little start in life, they've had a good education. Anything
even if you've already paid tax on it.
Yeah, but I don't care. So what?
Okay.
What? My view is that the society has created the infrastructure, it's created the markets, it's created all the opportunity for me to be able to do this. I might have had a rubbish education, but the point is society creates the environment in which we can all live, and we're all in this together. And I think I'm not a tree-hugging sort of socialist, but at the same time, I'm not I did it all myself. I do think there is the law of reciprocity, and I think that money needs to go around. And actually, if you leave money in families untaxed and unchecked, I've seen this from my work with Generation Next, the business I work with wealthy families, is that one of the jobs that we do is we try and help the family start communicating and understanding common purpose, and also how the money was created and the stories that went behind it. Because it's more important for your children and your grandchildren to inherit values around money and around how wealth is created and the virtue of work than it is for you to leave them loads of money. If you prepare them properly with those stories, the values, the principles, and if they also get money, whether it's taxed by the government or not, then they will be better prepared. And I do sincerely believe that in that sense, money's a tool.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Leanne Cope is asking, why haven't you got an electric car?
Well, the reason is because when I went to buy my car a year ago, I felt that the electric situation was a bit too difficult. My daughter at the time was at Durham University. We were going up 3 times a year. There was not enough charging points and there wasn't enough range on the cars we were looking at. And the economics just didn't make sense. So we bought a diesel Mercedes estate, right or wrong. It was 2.5 years old, bought it from the guy who bought it new. He took all the depreciation. Our view was we'd run that. We put the infrastructure in at home for electric. We've run that for 3 or 4 years. And then as the electrics become more ubiquitous and a bit more sensible, and not 60,000 quid secondhand, but perhaps 25,000 for a decent one. And we were on what's called 3rd stage batteries, which is coming in short now. That would be comfortable. It was just a bit too early for our circumstances to be able to get powering on those trips in one charge. So that's the reason. It's not because we didn't want to, and we are putting the infrastructure in here at the house. I
mean, I know we're not talking about electric cars, but it always fascinates me. All the people that don't have their own driveways or they have to do on-street parking, how are they going to have electric cars? How's that going to work?
Well, I think the point is it's the same old thing. you go on about what would I do if I was a chancellor. I would just make it so economically beneficial for everyone, even supermarkets, and say all supermarkets have to have half their car parks have to have charging points, not the 4 or 5 you've got to scramble with the Waitrose and you have a fight with someone because you can't plug your car in. It should be mandatory. So it's the same with, if we think about money, they brought financial education in at schools, and it's a good step in the right direction. But what we've really got, it's a bit like when they first brought sex education in. It isn't really about sex. Sex isn't about sex. Sex is really about how you communicate and relationships with people and your own sense of expression. That's really, and it's a healthy thing. So I think the same thing with money. Money should be talked about in the context of its use in the world, and breaking the shackles of it's either bad or it's brilliant, or we've got to covet it or we've got to avoid it. And I think it should just be an everyday discussion, that we should just talk about the reality that we are primeval beings. We're not programmed to be good with money, because we always will value the here and now rather than the abstract future that we can't possibly think, because our cave people brain says survive today, eat today, procreate today. That's all you've got to do.
Yeah. And just to bring money actually into that everyday conversation. I mean, that's what both of us are all about, right? It's just about having that conversation. Andrew's commented, you need advice and a plan. That's what many people do not have. Educating is the way forward. And then we've got Juliet Robinson. She's saying, hi, Fanny, great discussion and points from Jason about educating children, about family values and where the money's coming from. Such a valuable lesson. So, it's good. And I think that, but how do we get through? I mean, I know that you've got a great platform now where you're doing webinars, and obviously through Salary Finance as well, that you're getting into companies, etc. But how do each of us open the door to a conversation with people about money who really don't want to talk about it?
I think you've got to realize that it's not about the money. Money is it's a bit like when you've got a car and you're driving a car, it's not about the petrol, right? Why does someone doesn't buy a car because it's electric, petrol, or diesel? It may be a factor, but they're not driving. Hey, I've got an electric. I may say that, but they're saying I've got a car, right? Yeah. So really, I think we've got to really understand that money for people is all about. It's about a whole host of more complex things. It's about the stories we tell ourselves. It's about who we believe we are. When I sold my business 5 years ago, it was like me cutting my arm off, although I was very pleased to be out of it, and a bit like a demanding partner. I was pleased for it to have been out of my life. But part of my identity went with it. I know I got paid well for it, but the point was part of my identity and my purpose in life and what I stood for and who I was wrapped up in that business. So I think we've got to understand it's the stories we tell ourselves about money. It's the identity that we believe we are. But more importantly, it's also where we think we fit in the world. And in a Western world, we have, because it's easier to define success or position or status or where you are in the world through consumption and through material success of earnings and I'm the CEO of this, that, and the other. And we use money as a proxy for actually realizing really what is important in life and where we can add value. So don't get me wrong, I've interviewed lots of interesting people like Rob Moore, the multi-millionaire, he's worth a fortune, and he says money does make you happy. All right, I said, okay, well, that's great, Rob. Here's the thing is, I'm happy and I don't need to have your level of money. And I'm really pleased for you to have that money and I have no problems with you at all. But the thing is, every penny I get doesn't make me that more happier. So in other words, if I had twice the level of wealth I had, I may be marginally more happy because I can give to more causes. I can do other things with my money. I could give my time away for free, but I'm not going to be double the happy. So in other words, beyond a certain point with money, we have to understand beyond the basics, it doesn't make us happier unless, of course, it's taking us to a high level of purpose with pleasure. Yeah. And even then, it's fine. So if the money is a byproduct of you delivering immense value to lots of other people and society, then there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
there's not delivering value and you're getting paid a lot of money or you're earning a lot of money, then that's luck.
And I think that we also, though, have to address the other side. Is that something that I come across as a money coach? Because obviously I usually talk to people with money who are coming from the side of problems rather than from, people that comes, I'm having a fantastic time, come and talk to me, I need a money coach. They're more likely to go to a financial advisor. But something that I find quite interesting is that when somebody's in the corporate role and they're fed up with their corporate role and they're thinking, right, let's branch out and I'm going to start my own company. I'm really good at this. I'm excellent at this. And they do. And then all of a sudden, some of the beliefs and the feelings about themselves and money get triggered and magnified massively because they've come away from that regular income. And whereas it wasn't necessarily a problem before because it flowed alongside their normal life, all of a sudden it becomes a problem. And all of those things with identity and their role and how money shows up in their life, all of a sudden becomes a problem. So I think it's really great to, when we're talking about people like Rob Moore and all those kind of people who have said, yeah, it makes you happy. There's sometimes where it's just finding that alignment and just to get people into that arena where everything's working for them and everything's fine. But I don't know quite what I'm trying to say here, but do you know what I mean? We were looking at it all on the positive side, but I think it's worth noting the negative side, and that there are plenty of people that go, yes, but why can't I have that? You know,
yeah, it's interesting when I speak to people now who display overtly materialistic tendencies, and I'm not judging them. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So in other words, because I can see the mistakes I was making when I was young. What I mean by it is when someone keeps talking to me about how many cars they've got and watches, I'm not envious at all. I couldn't give a flying what's it. But I do start feeling quite uncomfortable because I felt, to me, gives me happiness. I've got some scaffolders taking some scaffolding down. I enjoy going to have a little banter with them for 10 or 15 minutes. I don't talk about anything I've got or done. All right, I live in a nice house, but that's not the point. I have a bit of banter with them. Hey, boys, do you want some biscuits or a cup of tea or anything I can do to help? But the point is, and then they start telling me little stories. The guy was delivering some bricks this morning, 7 o'clock this morning, right? He obviously wanted to have a chat. I wanted to get in and have my coffee and an egg on toast. I'm starving, and he just was not stopped talking. But he then started telling me his life story about how his dad beat his mum and all that. Here's the thing. It's not particularly amazing, but it's for me to be gracious and listen to him for 10 or 15 minutes. I get no payment for it. I get no accolade for it. He goes away thinking great things. Thanks, mate. Good to see you. He goes off. Now, it's silly. It's small. I can do that no matter how much money I have, no matter where I am. We're two individuals talking on one level. And I think sometimes money, lack of or loads of it or whatever, where we are, sometimes it just gets in the way. So we need enough. We need enough to live a decent life.
Yeah.
We define it. And more is great if we're adding value and we're still having pleasure and purpose in our life in proportion.
Absolutely. It's like this weekend for me, I've been sitting on a threadbare office chair that I've been meaning to change for ages. And I took great pleasure working with Neil in refurbishing it rather than replacing it.
Yeah.
So we're coming up to a close.
Yeah.
You've got your new book coming out. You've got your podcast. Let us know how we can find you and find out more and hear more from Jason Butler.
Yeah. Well, if you go to my website, jason-butler.com, you can sign up for my
website, I have to say.
Yeah, you can go to there, and I have access to all my materials there. All of it's free. The only thing you have to pay for is my books. My new book is The Money Miracle. That'll be coming out in the spring next year. A labour of love. I'm trying to make it the very best I've ever done. I've done 5 books, trying to make it my best work.
You promised to send me a copy of that one.
Yeah, I am. Yes. You're one of my critical friends. My weekly podcast is called Real Money Stories, and I love doing it. I speak to people about their money journey, but I just speak to some incredible people. You were on it, Fanny. I've up to nearly 60 episodes. Yeah. And I've got some fantastic guests in the pipeline already coming up. And from next week on Tuesday at 7:30 on Instagram, I do Instagram Live, and you can ask me any question about money related, anything money related, and I answer on there. Instagram's interesting because it's a completely different crowd. And even though I'm 51 years of age and it's mainly for young people, I'm getting a lot of traction on that because people actually on Instagram, a lot of people don't really understand what they're talking about. So if you are someone, this is an interesting point to share with your watchers. If you're someone with a skill, whether it's finance or anything, don't be frightened of Instagram because it's another way of you connecting with an audience on their terms. And that's what we have to do. And the other thing, of course, is I work part-time at Salary Finance. So people do come into contact with me through Salary Finance, my work there, all the videos and all the material I create for them. So yeah, the website's the best place. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, JB the Wealth Man. Come and find me, and I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Listen, Jason, thank you so much for your time. And can I thank everybody for watching and listening? It's really strange because I'm looking up on the screen, it says the one's viewing, but yet we're getting all sorts of comments coming up, which is great. So I have no idea. It's all to be explored and all to be revealed. So it's quite.
And here's the thing, Fanny, before I go, well done for doing this. You're a pioneer. I love what you do. And I think the work you're doing, I think more people, if people just did one thing in life, spent one session with a money coach, their life would be better.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. That's great. So listen, anybody out there listening to, if you want to come on and have a chat with me about money, especially if you're feeling quite brave to do so, just contact me, and there are going to be more of these. And in the meantime, I'd just like to say thank you again to you, Jason. Thank you to the viewers, and have a lovely rest of your lunchtime.
Thanks, Fanny.